Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week's video, the topic has changed completely. So originally I was going to do a video on creating a sense of depth within landscape drawings and paintings. A bit like the example you can see on screen. This is one of my recent landscape drawings. This is using Derwent XL blocks, the sort of compressed charcoal blocks that I used to use a lot. I don't use just as much these days. I was kind of obsessed with them this time last year. But anyway, you can see in the drawing I'm using sort of linear perspective to create that feeling of depth. So if you look at the road, it sort of narrows down towards a vanishing point on the horizon. Just single point linear perspective. So as I say, I was going to do a video on linear perspective and probably atmospheric or aerial perspective, whatever you want to call it. Now, I'm going to ramble for a minute or two, bear with me. When I get these ideas for videos, many of them never actually become videos for one reason or another. But when I get the ideas, I start doing a bit of research. And one of the things I do is to look through YouTube and see, well, first of all, how many other people have already made videos on the topic, and also how do they approach the topic? How do they present it? So in the case of creating a feeling of depth in a landscape drawing or painting, there are already thousands, well certainly hundreds of videos out there on YouTube. So looking at that, I thought, well, is it really worth me creating another video on the same thing? Probably not. But I did do a bit of research on how other people were presenting this idea. One of the videos I saw, the lady in the video, I'm going to call her the lady because I can't remember her name. The lady in the video, she started off the video with the idea, well, the words were, I can't remember the exact words, but the idea, paraphrasing her words, were something like, if you don't follow these rules, your paintings will look amateurish. And I do remember she used the word amateurish. So the rules that she was talking about were the rules of perspective, linear perspective and aerial perspective. And I was thinking, well, I don't really agree with that. But then I thought about it again and I decided that I would make a video on that topic instead. So at first I didn't agree with her. This idea that, you know, if you don't follow the rules, your paintings are no good. Or at least not as good. But then I thought about it a bit more and I thought, well, actually she's correct. She's right in saying that. Assuming that you want to be a naturalistic painter. Because if you want to be a naturalistic painter, you do need to apply all of these rules around things like perspective and values and color theory. They're not optional. They're required. They're essential to the naturalistic painting process. So yes, if you don't know the rules, if you can't apply the rules, you lack the skill to apply the rules, then yeah, your paintings and drawings will look amateurish. It's a bit harsh, but that's the reality of being a naturalistic painter. It is a rule-based approach to creating art, and if you don't know the rules or you can't apply the rules, then yeah, you're not as good an artist in that sort of narrow viewpoint, if you like. So the thing that I want to say was, just in case anybody comes across these sort of ideas, I would offer an alternative way of thinking about art, because there's more than one way to approach art. If you're a modernist artist, you can be aware of the rules, you can be an expert in the rules, and you can still choose to ignore them, or even purposely break the rules. That's okay if you're a modern artist or modernist. And you can see on screen two very different paintings. They're both, I guess, figure paintings. Both involve people, centered around people. Painting on the left is from about 1888. It's called The Convalescent. It's about a sick child recovering from an illness. And it is done in a naturalistic way. So there's a lot of attention to the light, what direction's the light coming from, how do you use values within the painting to indicate where the light is coming from, and you have to be consistent in that. Colors, you can't just use any old color that you want, you have to use representational colors, and you have to use the colors in the correct saturation, again to give the feeling of light and depth within the painting. Basically, if you're going to be, as I said, a naturalistic painter, there's lots of rules that you need to understand and you need to apply. The painting on the right, though, is very, very different. We can recognize there's two women here, but there's a lot of abstraction, there's a lot of expression in there, there's a lot of experimentation as well. And that's really one of the key things about modern art. It is very much about experimentation. The two approaches to art, therefore, are kind of starting from different positions. They're going in different directions, so they end up, the final goal of the two approaches to art are quite different. The naturalistic painter is trying to create something that looks natural, hence the name, naturalistic. The modern artist is experimenting and trying different things and being abstract and not worried about creating just purely an illustration of the world. They're trying to go deeper than that and find something more than just reproducing reality or illustrating reality. So, as I said, if you come across a video that's telling you you must follow these rules, remember that that's only if you want to follow the naturalistic approach. If you want to follow a modernist approach, you can ignore the rules. You can forget about the rules, or you can deliberately break the rules. All of those options are valid within modernist art. And which approach to art do you choose? I think it really depends on your personality. Some people, a very simple, crude sort of test would be, which of these two paintings do you prefer? Are you more inclined towards a naturalistic approach, or are you more inclined towards a modernist approach? And that's going to determine how you proceed as an artist, really. In my case, I'm very much leaning towards the modernist approach. The naturalistic paintings just don't interest me much. I can appreciate the skill and the knowledge that's required to do that sort of painting. It doesn't do much for me. I much prefer the modernist approach. The other thing about these two paintings that's really interesting, I think, is although they look incredibly different, they're both painted by the same artist. The artist was the Finnish artist Helen Scherfbeck, and I may be mispronouncing that. I've watched a lot of videos about her, and different people are pronouncing her names in different ways, so I'm not entirely sure what the correct pronunciation is. But anyway, Helen Scherfbeck, Finnish artist, born in Finland, lived there most of her life, but she was able to travel in France and other places, and she was definitely aware of the different trends within art, and she was active in the latter part of the 19th century through into the early part of the 20th century. So it was a time when modernist art was really developing and becoming more, I would say, the dominant form of art, at least for a while anyway. And you had people like Matisse and Picasso, and she would have been around even when the Impressionists were around, and people also like Cézanne, Van Gogh, and so on. But anyway, I thought it was interesting that an artist would change her style and her approach to art so completely within her art career. So the last thing I was going to talk about was looking at an example comparing one of my paintings to one of Turner's paintings, which may seem a bit egotistical that I would compare myself to such a great artist, but anyway, I want to talk a little bit about how you can, as a modern artist, how you can break the rules. You are aware of the rules, you understand the rules, but you choose to not just ignore them, but to actually deliberately break the rules. And it can be interesting. It can be an interesting experiment to do that. On the left you can see one of Turner's paintings. I can never remember the name of this painting. I know it involves the words, and at least some of the words, steam, speed and rain. I think those are the three words in the title, but I can never remember which order they're supposed to come in. Anyway, it's obviously an early locomotive going across a bridge, but you can see Turner used aerial perspective a lot. You can see in the distance where the land stops and the sky starts. It's difficult to see exactly where that transition is happening in this painting. They all start to merge together, which is aerial perspective, and he's following the rules, so using less saturated colors, using the values change. So in the foreground you're going to get a full value range from the brightest whites to the darkest darks, but in the distance you're going to lose those darker values, so you're only left with the brighter through to the mid sort of value range. Again, that's part of using aerial perspective, and he's using linear perspective in there as well. My painting on the right, on the horizon line, I'm aware of the rules of aerial perspective, but I chose to deliberately break those rules. So my horizon line that I put it in dark, well, relatively dark, French ultramarine blue, because I wanted that line, that transition from the land to the sky, to be a kind of feature within the painting, a kind of, not so much focal point, but I don't know, focal line, if you like, within the painting. So this is an example of a modernist approach to making art. I'm aware of the rules, but I chose to break them as an experiment to see what would happen, see if I like the results. Now, does that mean that I'm an amateurish painter? I don't think so. I'm choosing to break the rules, and I'm using a different approach to art, an approach to art that does emphasize individuality, experimentation, creativity, rather than an approach that focuses on rules and traditions. Okay, well, I think that's the main point that I wanted to make. Hopefully it might be of some interest. The main point is just, don't feel that you have to obey these rules that a lot of people are trying to force down your throat. By all means, learn the rules, become aware of them, study them, but there are other ways of approaching art, and don't be afraid of those alternatives. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching and listening, and hopefully see you again in the next video.